Hey everyone. Today, the developers of Humankind, Amplitude Studios, posted a small progress report on the game's development on the Games Together forums, and there are a few tidbits that people might find interesting. Going right into it, perhaps the most important part is that we now know that the PC version is going to be launching on time. However, the Mac version has been delayed. They say it's going to be about a month. Presumably, that's 1 month from the release date and not 1 month from today. So, if you're a Mac player, I'm sorry, you'll be waiting a little extra time. But for those of us playing on PC, we should have our hands on the game in 2 weeks. In addition to that, they've been working on a few other things, and we'll go over each. On balance and pacing, there was a lot of feedback in the closed beta, specifically tech costs and the time it took to era up and get your 7 era stars was really out of sync. And the AI in particular had a habit of advancing to the next era as soon as they hit 7 era stars. So Amplitude has rebalanced the research costs and era star thresholds. And I think this is probably a really good change to slow the game down a little bit. A lot of the eras went really, really fast. And, we'd all seen the AI reach contemporary era on Humankind difficulty at like turn 110, which is just insane, even for the highest difficulty level. So we'll have to see specifically what those changes entail. But overall, if they increase the era star threshold to 10 to 12 stars and reduce the research costs a little bit so that it doesn't feel like a requirement to get one of the scientist cultures, then that'll be a good change. They're also rebalancing many of the cultures, and this is definitely something that's needed. There aren't any specifics here, but a few that come to mind that probably need a little bit of balance work are the Phoenicians, who really need access to their emblematic district or quarter before the technology that normally allows for harbors. The Assyrians are pretty disjointed in the ancient era as well. The Franks in medieval, with their 50% food on cities, is just insane, and I totally expect that to get rebalanced. And the Joseon, with their crazy science output in the early modern, seem like another candidate, particularly if science costs have been reduced. Their current science output, as we saw in the beta, would just be too much. So hopefully we'll see some good balance work there, and there are actually a couple contemporary era cultures that don't seem as strong to me as they could, particularly given the other cultures, even though we haven't seen any of them yet. I'll also add the Romans, because, like any Western history guy, I'm into the classical era cultures, and the Triumphal Arch was just straight garbage. So next we have the new religious tenets, and these are ones that are going to have more conditional effects rather than just like these blanket bonuses that are always good for you. And this is something I was really looking forward to, because this is good for both people who want to roleplay and experience the development of a unique, individualized culture over time, but it's also really good for gameplay. If you look at games like Civilization 6 with their Pantheon bonuses and their religious bonuses, you could get stuff like getting extra production on camps. And that's not something that you're going to take if you don't have any camps, right? But when you do have camps, it becomes a legitimate bonus, and it becomes a trade-off between that and other bonuses. So introducing more of these tenets into the game allows the player to customize their religion in a way that's going to suit the way that they want to play the game. And we see this a little bit in some of the cultures already. So for instance, the Zhou in the ancient era, you're probably not going to pick them if you don't have any mountains, because the Confucian school is going to give you science per adjacent mountain. So I'm glad that the devs are looking into more ways to add things into the game that allow you to make adjustments based on specific circumstances. Next, there have been some changes to civics and ideologies. This is a big change because the main way that we were getting stability before, say, the early modern going into the industrial is through these sliders. If you were in the center of the slider on the civics and ideologies trees, then you were getting the plus 20 stability, and every time you moved to the left or right of that, you lost 10 stability with each step. And that was really the main source of stability for most of the game, other than spamming out garrisons or the other stability district, the Commons Quarters, that was escaping me for a moment. What I'm hoping this allows is that we'll actually be able to interact with that, right? That we'll have some more base stability on cities so that we can actually take advantage of swinging ideologies one way or the other. And again, it's good for both role playing, right? If, say, you want a more authoritarian government or you want a more democratic one or whatever, it allows you to pursue those different ideologies, but also from a gameplay perspective of just trying to, get the maximum era stars and win the game, it allows you more flexibility in how you pursue your objectives. Finally, they added some new unit abilities to gunpowder units, and I'm curious what this might be because I didn't feel like they were lacking very significantly. So to me, the gunpowder already felt quite different just by nature of every unit being able to strike without being retaliated against. And on top of that, you had like the different animations and all that really contributed to making gunpowder warfare already feel a little bit different than the earlier eras. So I'm curious what they've added here. I will note that one of the flaws of Humankind's combat that's really pushed to another level compared to some other 4X games is that striking first in a turn-based game is supremely important. And with the number of units involved in Humankind and the ability of players to remove enemy units without being retaliated against gives the attacker an enormous advantage. And this is really amplified when you enter the gunpowder era. So what I'm hoping is that there are some abilities to negate the attacker's advantage a little bit, because at the moment, once you get these really large armies and you're able to just delete 2 or 3 enemy units at the very start of combat without those units ever being able to do anything, that makes a really big difference in warfare. And because you're moving all of your units at the start of a round before your enemy can do anything, it can make warfare extremely mismatched based on who goes first. So hopefully we've seen some changes there. Next, aside from balance and pacing, there's also a new system, which is pollution. And we don't have any details about this. It comes towards the end of Era 5, which is the early modern. So right as you're getting into the industrial, which makes sense. My guess would be this probably affects tile yields and maybe stability. I do like having a pollution system. Hopefully it is a fully fleshed out, implemented system. And historically, particularly looking at more modern history, sort of water, air, and ground pollution had a really significant impact on the development of cities, where people chose to live, how industry was built out, all that sort of thing. So I do like that it's being added in because in more contemporary terms, this is a major factor in terms of how cities develop. Next, there have been some changes to diplomacy as well. Specifically, there are some new treaties and a more clear UI. I think a lot of us who have played the game will appreciate the UI changes depending on specifically what has been changed, but there were definitely some uncertainties in looking at the diplomacy menu, and it was hard to find some stuff sometimes and what the effects would be. So hopefully we see a more clear UI. And there are some new treaties, which I don't know what they'll be, but having more diplomatic options is always a good thing in my opinion. Finally, there have been some quality of life improvements, things like better descriptions of civics and their effects, which is a big deal for me because the descriptions in the game are generally lacking, in my opinion. They don't provide a lot of indication of the full effect or the actual effect of the thing that you're building or researching or whatever. So I'm hoping this extends beyond just the civics and effects to other things in the game, like wonders, where there are a lot of uncertain interactions between the way the description reads and how mechanics are actually implemented into the game. There are also some tutorials for new players, which is good. So some video tutorials, as well as like these fixed maps that tutorials can be played on. So making it easier for new players to learn the game, which is always good. And last, I'm not certain about this wording. It says, "We've improved the way AI deals with economies and armies' missions." I don't really know what that means because there weren't really missions in Humankind. Like, you would get random events, but those are just clicking a button that have an outcome. There weren't like quest missions like there are in Endless Legends, where you have to reach a certain objective and then you get some reward or another quest step or something like that. So this is unclear to me. If you know what this is talking about, please let me know in the comments, and hopefully we can get a better idea of what that's actually talking about. But I think this is more important. Levels of difficulty have also been balanced. I played exclusively on the Humankind difficulty in the beta, as well as the open dev before that. And particularly going from the open dev into the beta, one thing that was really obvious was how much of a boost the AI is getting at the start of the game. The green AI in particular would be entering the classical era at like turn 28, and a couple turns later would have like this massive stack of Hunnic Horde at your gate. And then you also had the black AI that sort of started to the southeast of the player in the beta, and they would just era up like no tomorrow. Like, they would consistently get into the contemporary era between turn like 100 and 110. So what I'm hoping is that the developers have smoothed out that difficulty curve a little bit, such that the AI is actually a threat throughout the entire game, rather than just getting like these massive advantages at the start, where sometimes they just get lucky and advance super quickly through all the eras. And hopefully this change to the era star requirements and research changes are going to help smooth that out a little bit as well. So that's it for the Amplitude developer update. Let me know your thoughts. I know we're all looking forward to Humankind, so felt appropriate to provide a little update here. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.